Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So today we'll talk about the manuscript writing for journals. Uh, as in the previous lecture, it has been mentioned that uh, if you don't publish, it means you perish. So therefore, without any hesitation, uh, uh, one should go for the writing. And in this lecture, we will try to understand that what are the main components on which we should emphasize to have a good scientific paper. Writing the manuscript, the first thing that you need to get in mood, then writing the first draft, that is very slowly, and one should understand everything, be careful adding the data, and then uh, also need some review to interpret the results, uh, and the connectivity of data which is being presented in the text and which is in the figure. So that is very important. So therefore, the first draft, that should be very, uh, very slow, and it should take time. And then after that, you can revise and revise and revise to improve that. But it doesn't mean just only to read it, but it means you need to check all the information which has been added. For example, you are adding some references, you need to check the references, whether they are right, they are mentioned in the right way. Then you need to check the data, which is presented in the text and then which is in the figures. In many cases, it is not representing the data which is present in the figures. So that's why it's very, very important to check it, to cross-check it. Then to cross-check the references which you have cited and then you have enlisted in it. And then once you finish, so then you can relax and you can prepare for the submission. The hardest part is getting started. Once you have started to write a paper, so then it means you have done almost 20% of the job. Because if you don't start, so that will give you a tough time, and that is the great hurdle between writing. If you look at the parts, we have title, abstract, introduction, materials and methods, results, discussion, acknowledgements, and references. All have its own importance, and it's worth to spend a significant time on each part. And we should not categorize it that this is important, this is not important. If you have a very good article, but the smallest part is the title, and if your title is not precise and attractive, so nobody will look into your research article. So that's why it's always important to emphasize every part. Best to begin writing when experiment still in progress. So this is always better, especially when you are writing materials and methods, and you are working in the field, you are working in the lab. You should start, and then you can write in detail. And because we need that in detail so that someone can repeat it. So such detail should be there. Reference published methods where appropriate. If you are not giving details, then you can also give the reference where the detail is given. But it doesn't mean that if you are giving the reference of an article where the methodology is not explained, so that is not valid. It means someone will be irritated if he or she wants to look into the methodology. Then the heading side are materials description, experimental design. These can be the headings. You can also separate the experiment, and chemical physical analysis can be separated with this, under the subheading, and then you can also write statistical analysis. The common mistakes which we make, that is the experimental design, number of replicates, experimental site, detail about husbandry practices not provided. So these things must be provided, and one should be very clear about it. And of course, the treatments. The treatment must also be clearly mentioned in the text. Appropriate references, chemical, physical analysis not provided. So the references of the method which you are using is very, very important to cite there. Then no too much irrelevant detail about the observation made, no information about the statistical analysis of data. So all these are things which can have a negative impact on your writing. So these are the mistakes which are mostly done in the material and method writing, so that should not be repeated. Then coming towards the tables and figures which we give in the results, so this is also important as I mentioned earlier many times, that we need to communicate clearly and precisely to the audience or to the reader. So if we are giving something which a person cannot understand it, so then there is no need of it. That means we are teasing someone. So that's why it's very important to give a clear tables and figures, and those should be in such a way that they are self-explanatory. The units should be given. It is not that one thing is given in the table and then the reader is looking into the text that what is this. Everything in the table and the figure should be clearly, and all tables clearly mentioned, and all tables and figures should be self-explanatory. So you can look at here. Everything is given. The units are given. Then the abbreviations are given below. It means whatever is in the table, so everything is very clear. Similarly, in this figure, everything is clear. You can see here, even the MAD, and then they see you can see here membrane electrolyte leakage, right? And so everything is there. These B and C, they are not given here because we have only mentioned here the leaf hydrogen peroxide H2O2. So this is given in that here. The B and C is not given here. That must be the part of it. But it means that when you have more than one figure, or more than one part of a figure, then you need to mention in the form of A or B, so that one can pick that which figure represent which parameter. So that's why it's important to write in the legends. And second thing, that when you have a time, when you have a days, you can write it in the series, in these kind of line graphs that from day to day, because you are going to compare the different hours, different days, different years. So then in that case, it's important to or it's very, very, very attractive to give or present in that figures, in that series figures or in line figures. Then the results state important comparison. Whatever you think that they are important and that should be compared, you can mention, and then interaction you can mention. Then you can also mention the main effects, the targeted effects. It's not good to repeat the numbers. If you have a table, if you have figures, everything is there. You can just mention that it's increased or decreased and it's compared. that, but don't need to write it that the maximum value was this one and the minimum this one. So this is wrong. The values they are given in the tables, you need to uh, write it comprehensively in the text. And if someone wants to see that, can be very clear in the figure in the table. Use your draft table figures to ensure that your text is accurate. So that I mentioned earlier, that we should check that the figures and the table's data is correctly presented in the text. Uh, it's not that you need to write many pages of results. That can be very short as well, but that should be precise. The youngest leaf, old leaves, and weeds were analyzed for Na, K, Ca, and Mg. Sodium and potassium treatment influenced the concentration of cations, both in leaves and weeds. Sodium ion concentration was increased both in leaf and weed as a result of K substitution by sodium. However, data shown that sodium ions were accumulated mostly in leaf as compared to that in weed. But you can also write it like here. The results in this regard showed that the K substitution treatment had decreased concentration of sodium plus potassium ions in beads. However, the concentration of alpha amino nitrogen was the same in all treatments. Uh, you can see here that we can we can write it in very precisely, and we can give the references of tables and figures so that one can understand easily, and there's no need to give the values here. What are the common mistakes in results? Failure to explain the interaction, overstating results, means exaggerating the results, complicated comparison, use then instead of compared, because when compared with doesn't uh, look very precise. So better uh, uh, to use then, because the comparison is something that you are comparing, but when you're writing then, so you are telling something. So that's why this word should be used. Inconsistent use or overuse of acronyms. So in, 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 in scientific writing, we don't need to use acronyms. Too much detail instead of citing tables, figures. As I mentioned in the previous slide, that you don't need to write the figure, but you should cite the figures in table. Data presented in table 1 showed that T2 and T7 segment increase grain yield, whereas control produced minimum grain. So here we have mentioned that everything is given at the table. Introduce the topic from journal, not to journal. It means that should be relevant to the subject. Use spell. It means from the first journal, and then you can go to more specific, but that should not be very general. Use examples from the literatures. This is good to argue whatever you are writing. It's better to give examples and the citation, identify the specific problem on which you are working, then your hypothesis should be mentioned. And the ideal length, two double-spaced pages. So this is an ideal length of the introduction. And discussion starts strong with the aims achieved. The aims which you had targeted and you have achieved, you can mention the start, because this will give you a good impression. Emphasize the new. Whatever you have got the new, you should emphasize. Otherwise, the reviewers, they may not understand what is new in this. Discuss anomalies. So, which are anomalies are generally very confusing. So that's why it's good to elaborate. because if you will not elaborate the anomaly, so then the reviewer will be confused because the standard and expected values, so they are different, and the regional value which you got in your results, that is different. Then you must mention that this was expected, and this is standard, but we got this result, and then you need to justify that why you got these results. Uh, then try to discuss with the previous work which is already published, because this will connect you with the already published science which is already expected. So it means whatever you have, that is a part of that science. So then it's easy to understand that the work is in line with the previous work. So that's why it's always important to connect with the previous work. Practical and research implications must be mentioned, that what is the significance, and then you can conclude it. And normally nowadays we don't have very long paper. If you have very long discussion, then you can have separate conclusion. But mostly it's last para of the discussion, and I think nothing more is needed. What are the common mistakes in a discussion? Signs of insufficient interpretation. So interpretation is very important. It means you are not interpreting. It's not stating the results. It's because in results you have stated, and you don't need to restate in the discussion. In discussion, you need to interpret that why is so. And then repeating introduction is also very discouraging, because the thing which you have already mentioned, that why you are writing in the discussion, you may have some more uh, more relevant references there, quoting too many statements from literature. So this is again very negative, that your own results are very small, but you are stating a lot of from the literature. And then overstating practical implication. So you are writing that you have done something which can change the world very quickly. In Punjabi, you can say the parmar. Whatever you have, the results in actual, you need to uh, write it like this. Don't need to overstate. And the conclusion should be the crux of your discussion. Basically, that is based on your crux. It means if someone has read the discussion, the conclusion means that whatever he has read, that has been summarized, and that should not be something new. That should be based on the discussion. The conclusion should be related to the hypothesis and objective mentioned in the so this is important, because you have mentioned some objectives, and if it's not concluded by your research, so it means the target has not been achieved. Conclusion should not be repetition of the discussion and results. It should be based on discussion and result, but should not be the repetition. It is the because it is the something which is based on that, and it is your own crux. And mostly the conclusion doesn't conclusion don't have the references, because it's your own knowledge which you are presenting here. It is the text which has been developed by you based on your perception about the results discussed. Then the references, you need to add the relevant and recent references, and from good journals, read the references and do not misquote, because if you don't read the article in real, so you may have misquote by using from the others if you are not reading by yourself. By highly selective and use correct style for the journal. So this is very important. Consult the instruction for authors, and in the journal where you are submitting, references citing in the text must appear in the bibliography. If possible, use automated references. like EndNote or Mendeley. And this is the one style that you can see here that we can write it like this. So the last thing which you need to write that is the abstract. This is very critical part. It attracts the readers to your paper. It states main objective and experimental treatment. Summarize key results. It states the conclusion and take-home message. And acronyms are not mentioned here, and we should avoid, and it should not exceed 300 words. So these are the main things which should be included in the abstract. For example, here you can see that the first part that is on the illite and vermiculite clay mineral, which shows that what is the problem. They have fixation problem, potassium fixation problem, and we have a hope that the sugar beet like crops can accommodate sodium instead of potassium, so that's why we can substitute potassium also. Then the methodology has been mentioned, and then the results has been mentioned in this purple color, and the last slide is concluded, whatever you have. So this is the abstract. Then you need the keywords. You must think something very attractive and relevant to that your article, to your results, and then it helps for the indexers and the people who are working, and they can find their relevant paper. If your keywords are good, then the citation will also good. The title will determine whether paper gets read. So this is the most critical part. Avoid long title. They are discouraged. Be very specific. Avoid abbreviation. As I mentioned in previous lecture, that the title should represent the whole story. If it is not whole story, at least 70 to 80% that should be understandable from the title that what is in this article, especially the people who are in the field. So that's why it's very important to have very comprehensive title and avoid long title. So here's comparison we given. The above one that is the long, and in the lower green that is the brief. So we can convert long title to brief title by thinking and spending some time for reflecting thoughts. Here are a few examples of title. You can use any of the style from these titles. So if you look at the broaderly results in the better performance of rice and roasted, different responses are made in non-green, tobacco, allopathy, because the use of effect and the use of effect of impact of, so these are not old. We should avoid such kind of work. So now the publication process, once you have completed your research, then you prepare your manuscript, then you submit your manuscript, then the editor will assign the reviewers, if he likes, then he will decide either he will reject or he will ask you to revise. Then you will revise it very carefully. It's not for granted. And then you can resubmit. And then it will be reviewed again. And then it may also be rejected again. Or it may also be given to revision again. And after 2-3 revision, it is not necessary that that will be accepted. That can be rejected at any time. But once it's rejected, then you can go to your initial research. You can think that whether I should have some more research or I should manipulate the results in such a way that it can give better outcome. And then you can prepare again the next step. Reviewers are mostly they are constructive and they have very good suggestions. And carefully, a careful response to reviewers' comment always improve your manuscript. And each and every question should be responded. And each change should be stated. So because the first you have record there, and whatever you are changing in that manuscript, that must be mentioned. Enthusiastic. Enthusiasm is very important. You should be excited to respond there. So not bad-hearted. A reviewer may be wrong. You know, don't need to be frustrated because you have time to rebuttal. But you should respect the reviewer's comments, and if you are if you think that the comments are not right, then you can give proper argument. And when you are upset in anger, don't respond then, because then you may be harsh, and harsh to reviewer comment is always negative. And don't call the editor or reviewer if you get information somewhere, because it is also against the writing rules. And of course, you can get the help from the other authors, which are in the part of your manuscript, and it's good then if they can read it at least, or they can amend their own part where they are more specialists. Or you can also get someone senior to help you in this case. So that was all about today's lecture, and I hope you have some taste that how we can go for the manuscript writing. Thank you very much.